It is semi-final weekend in the All-Ireland Hurling Championship, and for the second year in a row we've got a repeat. It is going to be Limerick against Galway tomorrow evening, and then we've got Clare against Kilkenny on Sunday. To look forward to both games, delighted to say we've got two-time All-Star goalkeeper with Cork, Anthony Nash. Anthony, how are you keeping?
I'm great. I'm further afield. I'm here in Spain, so if I'm sweating profusely, it's not because I'm inside in the car this time.
Well, I was going to say, you're probably sweating more profusely about the slagging you get for being in the car. I was expecting you were going to be poolside somewhere with a nice drink, but you've got yourself inside by the looks of it.
No, I'm outside in the shade, but the car one is good, right? I love one of the lads, or one of the fella put up a tweet underneath it, like, say, they actually indoors for once, so why couldn't I get a room? So I kind of learned a lesson there one day when the phone actually cut out with the heat, so I'm after finding a nice cool spot here now.
Only the best before semi-final weekend. I was reading your column earlier this week as well, and it was a point in the hurling pod which was brought up by both Paul Murphy and James Skell as well, which is that in a way players seem to not enjoy semi-finals as much as finals. There's this real feeling that by hook or by crook all you want to do in the semi-final is get over the line and actually get into a final.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of touching on in my article as well. Unfortunately, look, we've been to Croke Park a few times. I only made one other in the final, even though I think they played four semi-finals here. It doesn't matter. Performances don't matter. Obviously, as a manager, ideally you want to go into the final with a bit of form and stuff like that. But once you're on the right side of a 1 point victory and heading into an All-Ireland final, it's more relief that you feel after the final whistle. I remember in 2013 we beat Dublin, we were all jumping and celebrating on the field, and people were saying that we're celebrating in All-Ireland. We weren't at any point. We're just delighted to get to a final. Because as a player, it's what you're outside in the backyard and playing for. You're not running down the wing in your backyard and hoping to win a league match or hoping to win an All-Ireland final. So it's a big weekend, and extra pressures come here as well because, as you said, the matchups from last year, Galway and Clare, hopefully we're trying to get a bit of revenge.
That can be a very powerful motivator. I would think for Clare, particularly coming into this weekend, to have not performed last year, to have been beaten by 12 points against Kilkenny, and to have not maybe carried their Munster form into the All-Ireland series. Tony Kelly talked about it a bit a few weeks ago, that he feels that they've paced their season a little bit better. That's all the motivation you need, I would think, ahead of this weekend, is to not play like they did last year at the same point.
Oh, listen, if you got any Clare player behind closed doors and asked them, is this the perfect matchup, they definitely want it. They probably put down a tough winter last year. I remember in 2016 we put on a very tough winter as Clare after losing to Wexford, and supporters be coming up questioning what's going on or whatever like that. And I'm sure the Kilkenny game was brought up by a lot of Clare supporters, so this is the absolute perfect opportunity for them to right a wrong from last year, because last year, their performance in the Munster final, everyone was setting them up as number two to have a crack off, and it's again this year, and between for me, the two number two teams fighting against each other to see who's going to be in the final. I think it's going to be a great game. But as a Clare player, I'd say they're licking their lips with the opportunity to right a wrong.
How did you ever feel about the idea of the length of a break going into these semi-finals? Because I think with Limerick's injuries and having to work out, and we'll talk in a moment about the team selections, what they were going to do at 6, and in Kilkenny's case where they were carrying quite a few injuries coming out of the Leinster final, there's the argument to be said that 4 weeks is probably ideal, especially when you've got teams that are that experienced. Or is it better to come through a quarter final and have a game behind you just at 2 weeks before it?
Well, for us in 13 we came through after losing the Munster final. In 14 we had the gap and we got hammered by Tipperary above in Croke Park, so maybe you could look at it that way, that we'd 5 weeks at the time, I think, rather than 4. But I think if you're looking at two counties in modern days that are well used to the breaks, Kilkenny and Limerick are two of the best, and both managements will have great way of what I would have assumed is that they would have had a week off after each of their provincial wins and stuff. So I don't think it's going to be a headache for either one of them. For me as a player, I like playing games. I just wanted to keep playing, keep winning. And I know you talk about fatigue, that Clare had an extra game, but you have to look at Clare game and the fact that Mark Rogers and Tony Kelly hit heights that I'm sure Brian Lohan's delighted with. And you get extra confidence rather than in training. If you're scoring, look, you're happy, but actually doing it in a championship match is a different ball game altogether. So I'd say both sides, Galway, or all 4 sides, would be happy where they are. As you touched on it perfectly there, I think Limerick and Kilkenny's injury list and having the time to prepare a team is probably what they both needed. And while I think Galway and Clare probably needed those extra games for a bit of momentum again.
Yeah, it's very rare that the team news that comes out on a Friday afternoon raises quite a few eyebrows and maybe talking points. But this time round, we've been waiting for weeks since it was announced that Declan Hannon wouldn't be back for the semi-final to see what Limerick would do. And Kyle Hayes played hurling at under 21 level at 6, so maybe not a surprise to see him shift in field. But perhaps the left field option that came out earlier, Anthony, was the fact that Garrod Hegarty goes back into the half back line to play at 7.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting that Kyle would go to 6 and that Colin Coughlin to come in at half back. Like, in fairness to John, he's not a manager that throws out bogey teams all the time. You know, he's also 1 or 2 changes, and look, we can't assume anymore. You know, with managements that they don't play full teams all the time anyway. But it's a very interesting one. Like, the thing about Garrod is that he's a very disciplined player. Like, first of all, I hate to be Anna Murphy, because now you're looking at Garrod Hegarty, Kyle Hayes, and Dermot Byrne in a half back line for puckouts, and Jesus Christ, like, unless you're hitting the middle third, you're not going to be getting much success off the height of those 3 lads. So it's a fairly dominant and strong looking half back line, but it's a bit strange. But like, the thing about Garrod, as I said, in the half forward role, he's very disciplined and he does a defensive role brilliantly. So I'm sure there's absolutely no problem. And what Limerick seem to have liked to have done with Kyle Hayes, and now Garrod will do it, is that they have that attacking force in the wing. You know, like, that's the one fear I had, that if Kyle Hayes went to centre back, their attacking wing back was gone. But now with Garrod Hegarty, Jesus Christ, you couldn't have a better attacking wing back, you know.
Yeah, essentially that's a wall that they've put up now. So that's a minimum 6'4" to get into the half back line.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous for a goalkeeper to be looking down at that. Like, if you put an aerial ball down top of those 3, like, unless they can get Johnny Glynn home from New York quickly, you know, I don't know if there's anything that can match up aerially. And like, I always joke, like, if you're writing away to God for a perfect hurler, you go, look, can you give me a 6'4" hurler, you know, bit of skill, bit of speed, strength, you know, whatever like that, and he'll go, here's Kyle Hayes, and by the way, I'll try and grow Hegarty for free, or vice versa, you know what I mean? And now the 2 of them are in the same half back line is just crazy.
And if you're a goalkeeper facing up against that team, and in Éanna Murphy's case, he's probably going to have somewhere in the range of 35 to 40 puckouts if we base it on the amount of shots that Limerick tend to have in a game. So he is going to have a crucial role in determining how much ball Galway get this weekend.
Well, any team to beat Limerick, the goalkeeper has to have an unbelievable day in puckouts. Limerick are the best team in the country that set up the puckouts. They allow you to go short and then they chase you down. They'll force you long, and then, as you said, you're met with a wall. They can, like, even when Declan Hannon's there, is still the most dominant half back line that's out there at the moment. Like, so as a goalie, you really have to hit that middle third so accurately, and that's like Will O'Donoghue and Dara O'Donovan. Like, it was definitely the most difficult team I've ever come up against for puckouts. Like, you know, and when I used to go against them, I used to say to myself, look, I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to try and get, like, if I went long as a Cork goalkeeper on top of that half back line, we were going to lose. So I was kind of saying to myself, look, go into the middle third, see can we get success and get a few breaks, and that's all you can do. You know, if they decide to go aerially, Galway the next day, unless they're phenomenal on breaks, like, you know, it's Jesus, has there ever been a bigger half back line?
Yeah, and it's going to need a variety to the attack to try and get ball in there. And like, realistically, compared to the Tipperary game, Galway have to get more scorers involved than just Conor Whelan. Like, Whelan had to do a lot of the scoring for them the last day.
That's what I said in the article as well. Like, I was saying, like, that, like, I know it's Conor Cooney. I haven't seen the team. Is Conor Cooney down to start?
Conor Cooney's on the bench.
Yeah, like, see, I'm a big fan of him. You know, I've always been a big fan. That's why I kind of thought they might use him. Like, he's just a very, very good player. And what I found with Shefflin is he brought a bit of grit into him again. Now, I know his form probably hasn't been great this year, but like, you're going to need Nyland to shoot the lights out from distance, you know, and he's a more accurate forward, probably isn't out there. Contanen to chip in, but like, Conor Whelan is doing what most premier forwards in each county, like, you would have your Joe Canning would have been that role before. And now that's taken on that mantle, like, you know, but he needs the rest of the team to chip in because, like, I also mentioned that, like, let's say Aaron Glenn is an off day the next day, Seamus Flanagan normally chips in then, and so does Garrod Hegarty, Tom Morrissey, Keane Lynch and all them. So, like, Galway need 2 or 3 of their forwards to have a day of days to have any chance against this Limerick team.
Yeah, I mean, the change that Galway have made, it reverses what they've done earlier in the year. So Dahi Burke goes back into number 3 and Garrod Mack is going to come out to 6. Is that a direct response to trying to stop Galan?
I like that. I always prefer that. No, to be fair, both players in both positions are very good, but for me, the balance of the team, I think Dahi Burke at 3. Listen, he's been one of the best full-backs in the game for the last, I don't know how long, you know, last 5-10 years, whatever he's been playing, like, you know, and the one thing you want to do is you want to try and shut down Flanagan and Galan inside, and not many teams have 2, you know, big, strong, fit full backline players, like, so I think it's definitely to look at something. Whether I presume he'll be picking up Galan, and with the form he's in, you have to think about it, like, you know. Now, look, again, it could be a bogey team, it could be McInerney back there. You know, we don't know, like, you know. I know it's only 24, like, you know, a day, like, but I still prefer as an outsider to look in and see Dahi Burke at number 3 and McInerney at number 6, like, but and I can appreciate why Henry tried to do it, like, but for me, I think his best position is at 3.
Cian Lynch is back in the Limerick team as well at number 11. He's going to captain the team for the first time in Championship tomorrow evening as well. The expectation would be that now Cian Lynch hits Croke Park, maybe some of the other players who maybe haven't hit the heights of what we expect, like Gerard Hegarty, that Limerick will be hoping now that they can step it up a level as we get into the All-Ireland series here.
Yeah, look, I think they said it to Gerard there a few weeks back. The longer this team are left in the Championship, the worse the other teams are going to feel about it, like, you know. I'm delighted for Cian, to be fair, because he's after going through torment. Like, you know, I'd say his head is, you know, is melted from the injuries and stuff like that, and all he wants to do is hurl. Like, before his major injury, like, he was the best hurler in the country, you know. We always refer to Tony Kelly as, you know, as the maestro at centre forward. Like, Cian Lynch had taken that mantle over and had become the guy that was just, you know, like, he would have caused Cork the headache in the 2021 final or 2020, whichever, and because, like, you were kind of wondering, should you follow? And if you follow, you're allowing Gillan and Flanagan aside, and if you don't follow, Cian Lynch is going to destroy you. So, you know, Cian Lynch in form, which I hope to see, is great for, you know, every neutral spectator as well, because, like, what a genius on the ball, like, you know, and we've been deprived of that, and it shows how strong Limerick are. They won All-Ireland without him, you know, and I really hope for his sake that, first of all, he's fully fit, and second of all, he shows everyone in the country again how good he is.
Yeah. What kind of influence are you expecting from Cathal Mannion here? Because he got on a whirl the ball against Tipperary, where he got himself into very clever positions, and he was often the guy who made the pass before the pass in the tip game. Last year I thought he played very well at the point where Galway had to push him up in the second half. He can be effective in a few different positions, but what type of role do you think Cathal Mannion is going to play tomorrow evening?
So for me, like, I referred to Tony Kelly and Cian Lynch, I think Cathal Mannion is the Galway version. I think, like, you know, he's the guy that just makes that team tick. He's just a playmaker. He is such a, you know, a wonderful hurler on the ball. I think he's, like, look, a free role will probably suit it more. Like, you know, if he stays in midfield, Will O'Donoghue or Darragh Dunn was going to pick him up, like, you know. Now, whether he drops back into the pocket and is doing what he did against Tip, you know, to get on the ball, it worked an absolute treat that day. Like, and I'm surprised that, like, for me, I would have sacrificed the forward on him, you know, and put someone around him to mark him. Because, like, with all due respect to any cornerback anywhere, Cathal Mannion's a far better hurler, you know. So, like, I would have kind of probably looked at that, and I know Limerick, if they've Graham Mulcahy or Peter Casey and whoever is, you know, is in the 15 role at any given time, that they'll be kind of looking at that too. So where they play him will be interesting. He has to, again, I referred to a couple of players chipping in. This guy, you know, has to have a great game, because it was a turning point for the tip game for me when he went back there and the amount of ball he got on him. Like, you know, like, again, as a neutral, like, what a joy to watch playing hurling. He's just so talented, and, you know, seems to just, you know, like, swan around the field with the ball, you know. And so again, for a Galway perspective, he has to have a monstrous game.
Galway did a really good job of locking Tipperary down the last day. It's very rare that you will see two of the starting full forward line getting the hook at half time, and for their inside forwards not to score from play during the game, and their half back line came out with so much ball. But it feels like it's a very different challenge trying to stop this Limerick team compared to the way that Tipperary were poking the ball in the last day.
That Galway full back line is going to be under as much pressure as I am at Sweat at the moment, I'll tell you. It is just like, you've got the best duo of all inside, like, that worked so well together. Like, you know, I kind of referred to this before, that you had, like, Flanagan seems to be Gillan's legs, you know, and it's not that he doesn't have, but the amount of off the ball running to create space he does is unbelievable. And I did an article on him start the year to show the importance to Limerick that this guy is. He is just brilliant. And, you know, closing down Tipperary is one thing, and that's no disrespect to Tipperary, but these two boys are just in, Gillan especially is in the form of his life. You know, so, like, and I think that's what they're going to counteract. Like, I wouldn't be, you know, like the Dahi Burke thing, I think they should do. Whether they do it or not is another thing, but I really think if they can just tie him down, you know, which is a very difficult job. Like, and, like, I kind of refer to that. I just don't see, you know, and I know I'd be lambasted by saying this, like, I just don't see a Galway win. Like, I just don't see them being able to have all those performances. And the reason is that they haven't consistently shown us for 70 minutes this year. Are they good enough? 100%. Galway hurling's always there. Listen, they're one of the premier counties, but just this year they've shown 20 minutes in a game, then they go and they give another team a purple patch, or they take a few long range shots and they go wide, and Conor Whelan's inside, especially against Dublin, putting his hands in the air going wide, getting the ball in. They need to strike a balance of deliveries, especially getting into him. And then, like, that's hoping that he gets the better of his marker. Like, so I assume it'll be Dan Morrissey on him, who's an incredible man marker, like, you know, so whether it'll be him or what. But yeah, I just, you know, if like, there's no sitting on the fence here. Like, I don't see a Galway victory. Like, you know, I think which is a disappointment, I suppose, like if you're looking in from that angle, like, or as a neutral, like, but I just think Limerick had too much even with their injuries.
Yeah, you'd have to stitch together maybe Galway's second half performance against Dublin, the first half in Nolan Park this year, periods of the Leinster final, and maybe some of the game before half time against Tipperary, and you would say that is the height that this Galway team can get to. For me, I kind of always think they match up very well physically against Limerick. They can have the muscle memory of having won at the Gaelic grounds, but I'm kind of coming down your side here. I just get that feeling that there's another gear in Limerick, and also I'm just not sure if Galway can get absolutely everything right in order to beat this Limerick team, because we've been talking about it a lot. The last 8 or 9 games that Limerick have played, so many of them have been very close, within 3 points. Championship this year has been incredibly close for them, and Limerick tend to find the answers when they're required.
Big time. And again, what I said earlier, that the longer they've been left in the championship, it's going to be interesting to see how the half backline sizes up now for Limerick with that. But for me, I just think that Galway need to have the perfect day, and Limerick need to have a bit of an off day for a Galway victory. And that's not disrespecting Galway. That's probably everyone else in the country at the moment. You know what I mean? I hold Limerick in that high regard from what they've done. The question is, can Galway do it? Absolutely. We used to always fear Galway when we played them. We always knew if they struck form like that, you were under ferocious pressure. But again, it's just as you said, you have to stitch games together. If you stitch them together, can they win? Yeah, but I feel they'll have to.
Second game then on Sunday afternoon. The team news interesting ahead of this one as well. Adrian Mullen is named to start in midfield for Kilkenny. Mossy Keown, who had a hamstring injury, is named to start at number 11. So that's 2 huge boosts for Kilkenny going into the game. Richie Reid also starting at 6 for this one. And the Clare news is that they've been able to name their captain Conor Cleary at number 3 despite the shoulder injury that he's had, and perhaps even more crucially, John Conlon and David McInerney coming back into the half back line. No Aidan McCarthy in the matchday panel for Clare this week. So there's kind of boosts on both sides there, Anthony, if we take it that these are the teams that actually take the field.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Adrian Mullen is massive. He's huge for Kilkenny today, especially the way he's been playing the last years. He's probably the Cathal Mannion version, as in Kilkenny. So I was surprised when he was actually named midfield after. I was kind of Jesus. And then I saw him play against Dublin, the amount of ball he got on and stuff like that. I think it was Dublin or Wexford, one thing. But he's such a fantastic hurler, and look, again, as a spectator, you want to see the best players on the field, and you certainly don't want to go missing in the semi-final through injury. So massive boost to 2 of Moscow, and 2 massive boosts to Kilkenny. The Clare side, Aidan McCarthy is a huge loss. Free taking alone, and he's been putting up fantastic scorelines this year as well. And he's been, very solid. But for me, the most important thing there is that Conor Cleary comes back in. And do you know what? The funny thing is, right? You would have read stuff before or listened to stuff before that Conor Cleary wasn't good enough and this, that, and the other. And next thing, all of a sudden, he goes missing for 2 games, and everyone's roaring for him to come back. Now whether he'd have done a good enough job on Aaron Gillan that day, I don't know. But he's vitally important to this team. And John Conlon showed last year, Jesus. Without John Conlon last year, the team seemed to just capitulate. So I think it's a very good, solid Clare team. I think Mark Rogers and Tony Kelly hitting the form they hit the last is brilliant. Brian Lohan have been absolutely thrilled to see those two. I worked with Mark Rogers in UL, and I think we have no one that doesn't know him. Anyone that doesn't know him yet hasn't seen the best of him. He is just the most natural inside forward, and his first question is, can he score a goal? And the second option is a point. I think he's actually going to be he's very similar to Conor McGrath, great skill, everything like that, very low to the ground. But so again, the Clare side, I think they're coming in good settle this time again now.
Yeah, because when I look at that Clare forward line, you look at, there's a kind of a directness about them, there's a pace about that full forward line, there's a bit of inventiveness when you put Shane O'Donnell into account there as well. Even if it gets to a point that Tony Kelly is as tied up as he was last year by Mikey Butler, there's no way I think this Clare team are as quiet in the forward line as they were 12 months ago.
So for me, if Brian Lohan, you either put Tony Kelly at full forward and send him out the field and create your 2 and 2 inside, or you put him at centre forward and tell him get around the place if they put Mikey Butler on him. Don't have him on a flank. Don't have him on a wing or a corner where, you know what I mean, get him into a place where Mikey won't want to be. Or sorry, not that Mikey won't want to be. I don't think he wouldn't mind being anywhere. But more the Kilkenny defence, you want to create a kind of either space inside for the 2 or a hole down the middle at number 6. They're the 2 places I'd play Tony Kelly, because after that you can be man marked. Even if you pick him midfield, like Mikey Butler's going to follow him all over the field. So I think you're kind of looking at, where do you want to hurt him? Create 2 and 2 inside with Rogers and whoever else, or you get him at centre forward and get the gap down the middle from the Kilkenny defence.
And maybe there's that argument as well that if Tony Kelly gets tied up, David Fitzgerald runs the ball through the middle if Mikey Butler has been pulled around.
Absolutely.
You trust the rest of your forwards to do enough scoring even without Tony Kelly. Like, I'm sure Clare wouldn't care if Tony Kelly doesn't score from play at the weekend and they get to an All-Ireland final.
So there's two aspects of Tony Kelly. Number one is how good he is and how influential he is, right? Against Kilkenny. But the second thing then is, if he is being tied up again, is how can you make that most effective? And to me, it's down the middle. Just down the middle, like, we're just get the centre back out of play. Kilkenny might have to sit someone deeper and someone else comes into it. But Clare have a forward line good enough that if the space is created. So as I said, that's what I would personally do, is either be two inside with loads of space and Tony coming away out to midfield, or centre forward and pull Mikey all over this and let the other players know that he's going to have a huge gap down the middle.
Clare have conceded a few goals along the way here, 13 goals conceded so far in Championship, but I don't know how much you can maybe read into that there were, say, like a few sloppy goals that were handed to Tipperary the first day in Ennis. Is it a problem that they look leaky at the back, or were they more down to individual mistakes earlier in the year and you'd actually back Clare to have better defence this weekend?
Yeah, it's a mix of both. Like, I think that it is a worry, and especially going against Kilkenny. Like, the one thing Kilkenny always had, even like back in their pomp when they had the Eddie Brennans and stuff like that, like, they'd put up high scores, but they'd always get a goal or two. They'd always, and they were the killer blows, like, because, they had such, an aura about that team. Like, when they got a goal, especially 10 minutes before or after half time, they seemed to just up their intensity going for goals. And you know what? It seems to be a kind of on Cody, especially there. Seems to be kind of a trend again. They want to just, they're goal hungry, and Clare have been leaking a few, but they're going to have to. You can't concede goals against Kilkenny. Of all the teams, it just seems to give them that extra boost. It's almost like a 5-point score rather than a 3-point score. But they'll have to, and hopefully Conor Cleary coming back in, and John Conlon maybe sitting a little bit deeper, not allowing that space inside, will help them do that.
Like, John Conlon can't account for a dozen points last year with the victory that Kilkenny got, but you kind of got the feeling that the minute that he was ruled out, that was really bad news for the centre of the team for Clare. A few years ago we would have never probably suggested that John Conlon being at 6 was so crucial, but his absence was definitely felt in that semi-final.
Mayor, I have no problem saying this. I thought it was the biggest mistake they were making, because they playing John Conlon at 14. Like, Jesus Christ, he was a torment. 11 or 14, he was such a torment. And when he went back into the back, I openly said, geez, I think it's a mistake. And now you look at it and you go, how important he is to that team. He is the anchor back there. He basically dictates the defence, holds the middle very well. And not only that, like, as a forward, he also knows the deliveries that he can give, and he seems to get into space all the time in a fantastic strike of a ball. So he's huge, absolutely massive for that team. And I think Clare, of all teams, have probably 4 or 5 players that they just can't afford to lose, and he is definitely one of them.
Maybe as well this speaks about the change in the role of the number 6, because once upon a time you almost put like your best man marker at 6. You want to get full back in 6, right? But the amount of teams who now play creative hurlers at 6.
Yeah, definitely. Like, Declan Hannon, we could go through a list and try to work it. But for me, it's not just creative hurlers, it's intelligent, it's people that can read the game, it's being in the right place at the right time. How can you get into space? And it's almost like one of the midfielder jobs is to tag that number 11, but like, your centre back nowadays is more the quarterback per se. He's the person that just sits around, organises everything like that, and that's why I think Declan Hannon will be a loss for Limerick. Like, Kyle Hayes is going to do a fantastic job, as you said, he's played there before, but Kyle is more of an offensive threat. He'll play a different role at centre back, like, if he was allowed to do it, but I'm sure Limerick have him trained into it, and John Conlon has become that like, it's not the stand and mark and fight the centre forward, like thinking of the John Powers of Kilkenny, standing against a Brian Corcoran or something. Like, it's this guy has to come back, sweep, help, be the extra defender, and yet still know his man. So it's intelligence more than anything.
Kieran Joyce was saying on OTB AM this morning that in a way he's looking at Kilkenny as a little bit of an unknown, trying to work out exactly where they're at coming into the semi-final. What's your read on year 1 of Kilkenny under Derek Lyng thus far?
Yeah, look, I think he's definitely trying to kind of make a hybrid version from short play to long play. Like, they still go along a lot, you know what I mean? Like, they're trying to mix up their play as best they can. But to be honest, I think they cruised through Leinster, so you can't exactly say that anything went wrong. The Leinster Championship was nothing like the Munster Championship, But I think they just got to a final and, did their job, and in the final they had how many injuries and still won. So you can't say it's been a negative in any way. I think he's done a great job. I think the continuity from what Brian Cody was doing with a mix of his own style is good too. And you know what I'd say as a player, like, I'd say no one was happy to see Brian Cody go, but like, I think they're very happy with what they've got so far, and it seems to be going well. So I would say so far so good.
How's your feeling about how this game is going to go then? Like, I think the first thing to say is it's not going to be a 12-point blowout, I think, either way this time.
Like, you and I could sit down here, I could just talk to someone else, and I am so tight in this one, it's scary. like the Munster cockiness with the championship going so well puts me with Clare, and then of any team that are giant slayers or teams that think Kilkenny are just that one game team, as well. So like I really don't know on this one, because there's so many things. Like, will they follow Tony Kelly? Will Tony Kelly play centre forward? Are these injuries cleared? Like, if we go into the field and Conor Cleary isn't there, I'm kind of siding with Kilkenny. If Adrian Mullins isn't playing outside, it's just so many factors to this. And it's not me sitting on the fence. I came straight out and said that Limerick will beat Galway. This one, I don't think you can get any better motivation for Clare. I think if any Clare player could have asked for any semi-final, this is the one. And I think it's going to be a cracking game. Look, if you're from Leinster, you'll say Kilkenny. If you're from Munster, you might say Clare, but it's going to be very, very tight, as I said, and I can't see a blowout in any aspect of this now.
I'll let you get into the air conditioning now in a moment. By the way, you're more than welcome onto the hurling pod. We were joking about this, that you and Skell had some kind of beef after you were saying that he hates everyone. He is an equal opportunities hater, by the way.
That's it. Well, at least he fixed it that way. Yeah. No, I'll definitely come on. I'd love to have the crack. You'd have to decide who's the best goalie in on air, though. That's the only thing we're going to have to decide.
Mix Herity into the account as well. There's just far too many goalkeepers around off the ball at the moment.
That's it. I'm not so sure that the crowd and the listeners could listen to two crazy goalkeepers talking on the show, but 100% I'd love to get on.
That's fine. Murphy and I can go off, refill our My Waddy. You guys can talk about puckouts for 20 minutes. No problem. Be very exciting. The one that jumped into mind, though, Skell was telling us a story this week about getting ready for an All-Ireland semi-final in 2012. He went down into a bog. He found a broken bridge and had to fix that because he wasn't able to get his turf out. So he should have been at home relaxing ahead of a semi-final, but instead he decided, I'll break a bridge and try and refix it with a bit of straw, which I believe is how he spent his day before the 2012 semi-final. They won afterwards, so he was crediting this as perfect preparation. What was your preparation like getting ready for semi-finals and big games then?
You after teeing me up here. Do you know who they beat in the 2012 semi-final?
Well, I did, but I didn't want to mention that they beat you, but go on.
Thanks very much. Well, you did it kind of very subtly, in fairness to you. What did I do? I didn't change any routine, to be honest. I would have done the same thing for every match. If we went up on a Saturday, I'd go to Cantor pitch on a Friday with Aidan Walsh or Lochar McLaughlin, touch a few balls, make sure my handling is good, my striking is good, and I'd be there for 15 minutes, practice puckouts. If it was a Sunday match and we were home, so like Croke Park, obviously, like I would have done on a Friday, and then just nothing, would have changed nothing really. We would have stayed up for the All-Ireland semi-finals in the Burlington, so we always knew a route where we could go on a puck in the street. Twice the guards came up and asked us to get off the street hurling, but there was no place we could really go. But that was my first ever game in Croke Park, actually, as well. I'd never played in Croke Park before that, so my preparation that day was actually changed a little bit, because my warm-up would have been like, let's say about 15 low balls, 15 high balls, or like that. But the sub-goalie, I think it was Darren McCarthy at the time, he hit about 10 balls in the ground, and the surface was so different that I'd say 9 out of the 10 skipped past me. So I was like, right, we're focusing on low balls. And then they got the first free, and Joe Canning went for goal low. Unfortunately, it hit me my preparation only changed that day because I was shitting at the pitch in Croke Park was too fast for me. No, apart from that, I wouldn't have built bridges, fixed bridges, or gone to bogs or anything like that. I was quite relaxed.
No, it's a very scale plan ahead of a semi-final. Did you find it unusual not sleeping in your own bed on the night before a semi-final? And I suppose you want to probably take out those issues where you could have a late train, or maybe you get stuck in the motorway. You don't have that risk on the morning of a game, but would you prefer to have been in your own bed the night before?
No, it didn't bother me. A lot of lads would have. There was a lot of the teammates would prefer to be at home and stuff like that. And I know teams now get the train up in the day and they do whatever like that. But I didn't mind if I was in a hotel room or anything like that. I decent enough to sleep anyway. But it never really was affecting me. And as I said, no lads would have preferred to be at home and gone up and down the day. But I prefer to be up there the night before, relax, and know that you're only kind of a 20-minute journey rather than having a full day of travelling.
Takes that risk out as well. Hurling is anyone's game, by the way. Off the Ball has teamed up with the Senior Hurling Championship sponsors Borgosh Energy. We're uncovering stories highlighting the positive impact hurling is having on people's lives. If you want to see more, check out borgoshenergy.ie/home/BGEGAA. Anthony, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of the holiday, and hopefully you get yourself a nice seat somewhere to watch the semi-finals over the weekend as well.
I will. I have it organised.
Good man. Chat to you soon.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks. Bye-bye.